Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be reading some more of Five Nights at Freddy's Silver Eyes. So everyone, today was the release of Fall Guys Season 2. They did extend it, but I'll be doing a video probably tonight. I did play this morning, but they did add some new maps and some new stuff. It's pretty new. So if you guys like, subscribe. By the way, most of my subscribers live in the United States. 40% of my subscribers live in the United States. My viewers, I meant. 60% of you aren't subscribed. And 40% are. So those 60%, please like and subscribe. Because I can see how many viewers are subscribed or not. Which 40% are and 60 isn't. Most YouTubers have less of 50% subscribed and more unsubscribed. It's just, I do the same too. So, where we were before in the Silver Eyes was that Charlie figured out that, well, she basically saw Stanley. You guys don't know who Stanley is. That means you guys weren't listening, but Stanley is a animatronic. It's a unicorn animatronic. By the way, guys, we're on page 8, if you guys are following along. At the foot of the bed, there was a wheel made of patched-together metal. It always had reminded her of something she might find on a submarine. Charlie turned it. It stuck for a moment, then gave away, rotating as it always did. And across the room was the smallest door swung open. Out sat Ella on her track, a child-sized saucer in her tiny hands like an offering. Ella's play dress was still crisp, and her patient feather shoes were still stone. Perhaps the closet had protected her from the damage. Of the damp, Charlie had an identical outfit when she went back to when she saw and Ella were the same height. When Ella was the same height. "Hi, Ella," she said softly as the wheel unwound. Ella reacted to the closet again. The door was closing behind her. Charlie followed her. The closet had been built to align with the slant of the ceiling and were the three of them. Ella lived in the short one, which was about 3.5 feet tall. Next to it was a foot or taller. In a third closet to the bedroom door was the same height as the rest of the room. She smiled, remembering. "Why do you have 3 closets?" John had demanded the first time she came over. She looked at him blankly, confused by the question. "'Cause that's how many they are," she said finally. She pointed defensively to the littlest one. "That one, Ella's anyway," she added. John nodded, satisfied. Charlie shook her head and opened the door to the middle closet, or tried to. The knock stopped with a jolt and it was locked. She rattled a few times but gave up without much conviction. She stayed crouched to the floor and glanced up at the tallest closet. Her big girl closet was about a day grow into. "You won't need it until you're bigger," her father would say. But that day never came. The door now hung open slightly, but Charlie didn't disturb it. It had opened for her, and only had given way to time. As if she moved to stand, she noticed something shiny, half hidden under the rim-locked middle door. She leaned forward to pick it up. It looked like a broken-off piece at a circuit board. She smiled slightly. Nuts, bolts, and scraps, and parts had turned up all over the place. Once upon a time, her father always had stray parts in his pockets. He would carry down something he was working on, set it down, and forgot where it was, or worse, or something aside for safe keeping, never to be seen again. There was also a strand of her hair clinging to it. She unwound it carefully from the tiny lip of metal it was stuck on. Finally, as she thought she had been putting it off, Charlie crossed the room to pick it up. Theodore. Oh yeah, if you guys don't know who Theodore is, Theodore is also an animatronic, just to say that. His back had not faded in the sun like the body of his body, and it was the same rich dark purple she remembered. She pressed but the ton at the base of his neck, about right here, remained lifeless. His fur was threadbare. Fredbear or threadbare, they rhyme. One ear hanging loose by a single rotting thread. Through the hole she could see the plastic of the circuit board. Charlie held her breath, listening fearfully for something. I lie. The rabbit said with a barely audible halting noise, and Charlie sat him down, her face hot and her chest pinched tight. She had not really expected to hear her father's voice again. I love you too. Charlie looked around the room. When she was a child, it had been her own magical world, and she was possessive of it. Only a few chosen friends were ever allowed inside. She went back to her bed and set Stanley moving on his track again. She left. Closing the door behind her, the little unicorn came back to halt. She went out the back door to the driveway and stopped in front of the garage in her father's workshop, half buried in the gravel a few feet away. With a piece of metal, Charlie went back to pick it up. It was joined in with the metal, with a piece of metal. Charlie went, smiling a little as she went back and forth. An elbow joint, as she thought. I wonder what it was belonging to. She stood in an exact spot many times before. She closed her eyes, and the memory overwhelmed her. She was a little girl again, sitting on the floor of her father's workshop, playing scraps of the metal as if she were toy blocks, trying to build a tower with uneven pieces. The shop was hot, and she was sweaty, grime sticking to her legs and sat in her shorts and sneakers. She was almost smelled the sharp metallic odor of her soldering iron. People are mowing their lawn. Don't worry if you guys hear that pretty loud. I'm sorry. Stanley's face was unfinished, one side and shining and friendly, with a gleaming brown eye that seemed almost to see. The other half of the toy's face was all exposed. Had all exposed circuit boards and metal parts. Charlie's father looked up at her and smiled, and she smiled back. Beloved in a darkness corner, her father barely visible, hung jumble of metal limbs, a twisted skeleton with burning silver eyes. Every once in a while, a game an uncanny twitch. Charlie tried to never look at it, but her father worked, as if she was with her makeshift toys. Her eye was drawn back into it again. The limbs controlled seemed almost mocking. The thing with the ghastly gesture, and yet there was something about that suggested enormous pain. Daddy? Charlie said, and her father did not look up from his work. "Daddy," she said again, more urgently. And this time she turned slowly through the not fully pleasant in the world. "What do you need, sweetie?" Okay, I will be the dad. "What do you need, sweetie?" She pointed at the metal skeleton. "Does it hurt?" She wanted to ask the question, but when she looked into her father's eyes, she found she could not. She shook her head. Nothing. Sorry guys if there's a sun right there. I'm very sorry. Yeah. He nodded at her with an absent smile and went back to his work. Behind him, the creature gave another awful twitch, and his eyes still burned. Charlie shivered and drew herself back to the present. She glanced behind her, feeling exposed. When she looked down and her fixed on something, she widely spaced grooves in the ground. She knelt, thoughtful, and ran over her, one of them. The gravel scattered away. The marks worn heavily into the dirt. A camera tripod of some sort. It was the first unfamiliar thing she'd seen. The door of the workshop was cracked open slightly, inviting, but she felt no desire to go inside. Quickly, she headed back into the car, but she stopped as soon as she settled into the driver's seat. Her keys were gone, having probably fallen out of her pockets somewhere inside the house. She reacted her steps, merely glancing into the living room and in the kitchen before heading up to her bedroom. The keys were on the wicker chair. Besides Theodore the rabbit, she was picking them up and jingled them for a moment, not quite ready to leave this room behind. She sat down on the bed. Stanley the unicorn had stopped beside the bed, as she always did. As she sat, she patted them absently on the head. It had grown dark while she was outside. In the room was now cast in shadows. I moved places because of the sun. She sat down at the bed. Stanley the unicorn sat beside her. I read this part. Theodore's eyes were no longer shut, and his thin fur and hanging ear made him look like a sticky vagabond. When she looked at Stanley, the rust around his eyes made them look like hollow sockets, and his bared teeth, which she had not always thought of a smile, became the awful knowing grin of a skull. Charlie had stood up, careful not to touch him, and hurried towards the door. But her foot caught on the wheel beside her bed, and she tripped on tracks and fell sprawling on the floor. There were no whirls spinning, and she raised her head to a small pair of feet appeared under her nose. Clad in shining patient leather, she looked up. There above her was Ella, staring down at her, silent and uninvited, her glassy eyes almost appearing to see. The teacups and saucer were held out before with a military stiffness. Charlie got up cautiously, taking care not to disturb the doll. She left the room, stepping carefully to avoid accidentally activating any other toys. As Charlie bent, Among Us reference, by the way. Just kidding. Fumbled 3 times before sliding in place. She backed down the driveway, running recklessly over the glass into the front yard. On my way, Charlie pulled over on the shoulder and turned off the car, staring straight at her head. In the windshield, her eyes focused on nothing. She forced herself to breathe slowly. She reached up and adjusted the rear view mirror so she could see herself. She always expected to see pain, anger, and sore written on her face. But they never were. Her cheeks were pink, and her eyes and her face looked almost cheerful, like always. Her first weeks living with Aunt Jen, she heard something over and over when Aunt Jen introduced her. What pretty child! What a happy-looking child she is! Charlie always looked like she was about to have a smile. Her brown eyes sparkling, her thin mouth ready to curve, even when she wanted to sob. Was mild Batral. She ran her fingers through her light brown hair like this. That's what she was doing. Magically fixed its sight frizziness and put the mirror back into this position. She turned the car back and searched on for a radio station, hoping music might bring her fully back into reality. She flipped from one station to a station, not really hearing what any of them were playing, and she finally settled on an AM broadcast, who hoped to be yelling constantly at his audience. She had no idea what she was talking about. But the bash with an annoying sound was enough for the jar to back into the present. The clock was always wrong, so she checked her watch. It was almost time to meet her friends at the diner they always chosen. Near the center of town, Charlie pulled back onto a road and drove, letting the sound of angry talk radio hosts soothe her mind. When she reached the restaurant, Charlie pulled to the lot and stopped, but they did not park. The front of the diner had a long picture window across it. It always had been right inside, though she had not seen them for years. It took her a moment to spot her friends through the glass. Jessica was easiest to pick from the crowd. She always enclosed pictures with her letters, and right now she looked exactly like her last photo. Even seated, she was clearly taller than the other boys, and very thin. Though Charlie, I'm gonna see how long we have left. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm gonna see how many pages we have left to finish chapter. I'm starting to think that this book doesn't have any chapters, even though we're on chapter 1. I've seen it goes for more than 100 pages or something. I don't know. But I was gonna leave it off here. We are hold on. Okay, we're at the beginning. We're currently at the beginning of page 16. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys all have a nice day.